Hey everyone, it's Allie, and with the launch of Last Epoch Season 2 being ever so close, and a lot of new people are looking to check out the game for the first time, I thought I should go update my new player guide to the modern age to, well, hopefully make everyone's life a little bit easier starting off in the game. In today's video, we're going to go over pretty much everything you need to know about the game, and while we're not going to go into hyper-specific details about a lot of stuff, I'm going to basically try to cover starting off the game and everything you need to know about picking a class, all the way to what you can do in Endgame and what the Endgame would look like, as well as any other useful information along the way. So, with that said, let's get into it, let's discuss everything, as we have quite a lot of things to go over. Now, the first thing we should go over before we go any further is to, well, make you aware of the endgame guide and just how good it is. The devs have spent a long time putting this together, and honestly, it is literally the greatest tool they have at their disposal. What a core philosophy of the devs is that they want you to basically not have to go to any alternative websites for most stuff in the game. This, along with the fact that a lot of tooltips in the game are literally straight to the point and tell you exactly what they do. For example, with Aftermath, what I'm trying to make here is that the game tries to give you all the information you need in game to be able to put your build together and to know how the game works. Please press G, it is your absolute best friend. Now, the first thing you're going to have to consider when trying to play the game is, well, what exactly to play. Now, Last Epoch has a few classes, and each class has their own mastery attached to it, which is going to dictate the kind of build you're going to play. In Season 2, these masteries can be respecs. So if you don't enjoy what you're playing and would like to check something else out once you do end up picking your mastery shortly into the campaign, you can just go ahead and respec it for a nominal gold fee. Now, these masteries are going to have their own passive trees, which is going to make them special. In my case, I'm a sorcerer, meaning I have access to the full sorcerer tree. And if I wanted to pick up some points from Rune Master, I can only pick up the first half of them. At the same time, there are some skills that are tied to each mastery. They have to put a few points into the passive tree to get. At the same time, each mastery gains its own set of passive bonuses and a skill attached to them. So there's some reason to pick every single mastery. On top of that, each skill in the game has its own passive tree. The really cool thing about this is that they are very, very friendly to use. As you can see, I am at level 10 with +1 because I have +1 on some piece of gear, and we get accelerated XP up until level 20. This accelerated XP is going to be based off of your current level, meaning as you progress, you're going to be able to just immediately get a bigger chunk of your skills up front if you end up going and respecking it for a different skill because you didn't like it or wanted to try something else. By default, each of these passive trees has 20 points you can spend, and again, you can get extra passive points to spend on them through other gear. These points are all meant to do something interesting, where these small nodes are typically smaller and niche things that either augment what the skill already does or makes it a little bit better or gives you some extra buff. The big points are typically going to be major nodes that are going to completely change how the skill works. The cool thing about these is that there's quite a lot of possibilities. For example, Snap Shock literally just turns Snap Freeze from a cold skill into a lightning skill. And there's a lot of synergies with a lot of different skills that all these passive trees provide. The point of the game is you could play one button builds if you want to, but the game heavily incentivizes you and gives you the options to play multiple skills and to combo them and to have a really good time together with them. With that said, realistically, most builds are completely viable, while pretty much every build almost is designed to be able to make it to the end game. Obviously, some builds are going to fall off as you push into the end game, but somewhere around 60 to 70% of all skills of the game are either viable as an actual end game build or are a portion of some end game setup that is pretty good for end game. What I'm trying to get to out here is that pick whatever seems fun to you and go with it. It's probably going to do pretty well. On top of that, once you finally do decide what you want to play, it's time to, well, go through the campaign. Now, the beautiful thing about this game's campaign is they make it really easy for you to get through it. On your first run, you ideally would want to complete the full story to get all of the benefits from it. Ideally, the major one being getting to the end of it so you can then go and unlock your faction. All you have to do, realistically, is just get through the Ruined Era until you get to the end of time, and then you unlock the end game at somewhere around level 20. Now, you're not going to want to immediately jump into end game like this, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to keep going through the story until you get all of your passive points and idle slot rewards, which you can see in the bottom left of the map, and then at that point, well, you can just skip the rest of the story and immediately go to the end game. Now, one thing I might point out to you here, and it'll be linked in the description below, is the build planner on Last Epoch Tools, where you can click on the quest tab, and here you can see every single quest that currently gives you either passive points or an idle slot reward. They can pick and choose what you want to do. As you can see, there are more quests than what you can get, and there's a cap to how many you can earn, so you do not need to do every single thing. Later on, if you know exactly what to do, and this is actually going to be a video I'm going to plan to do post-launch, as a lot is actually changing here to make this even better, you can very easily get a character all the way through to the end game in less than 2 hours or so, making this really, really fun. The really nice thing about the story is that you only need to get through it fully on your first character because your only goal is to get all the way to Majelka and to unlock either the Bazaar or the Observatory, which is your endgame faction that we'll discuss at the end of the video. Outside of that, the only other thing they need to do on other characters, other than simply getting to level 20, unlocking the endgame, and getting your mastery, is to get all 15 passive points and all 8 idle slots so you have full access to all the power that your character is meant to have. What's really nice is that in Last Epoch tools in the planner, which I'll link in the description below, there's a quest tab which shows you every single passive point they can get, so it should be really easy for you to go through and make sure that you aren't missing anything. With this, that means you have to only get to about chapter 7 or so, and then once you do that, you can just ignore chapter 8 and chapter 9 and just immediately move on to the end game. While going through the campaign, there really isn't much to say. There aren't really any dead ends or bad zones to go through, and basically everything is relevant with just a few side zones that are actually rewarding if you do end up doing them. One thing that you're going to become very accustomed to very quickly is going to be the game's crafting system. Now, while progressing through the story, while progressing to endgame, while progressing through any portion of the game heavily incentivizes you to do some crafting. Now, you might be intimidated by that, and this might be something you might not want to interact with, but honestly, that is the wrong way to go about it because my god, does this game do crafting really well, and it really, really is intuitive. Crafting in this game is pretty darn simple. If you simply hit F, you open up the forge, and you can craft anywhere in the game that you want to. You can even craft in combat if that's something you want to do. From here, all you do is you're going to take an item that you find off the ground, and you're going to put it inside the forge. At the top, you're going to see the forging potential, which is the total amount of stuff that we can do to that item before the item is effectively bricked, and there's nothing else you can continue. Now, items in this game work exactly like any other RPG do, where we have prefixes and we have suffixes. The only time rarity matters is in the end game, where we have purple items, which are called exalted items, that have a tier 6 or tier 7 mod on them, which is unobtainable through any other means. Normally, on a piece of gear, if I were to craft armor, for example, and make this stronger, I can only go to tier 5, but in the end game, you can find T6 and T7 items, which are going to be the basis of what you want to end up crafting your items off of. In terms of changing your item, once you put it in here, as you saw, it's pretty simple. Every step that you do and anything you want to change to the gear is going to require a random amount of forging potential. For example, if I want to upgrade my dexterity, I simply click the plus arrow, and I'm going to expand a dexterity shard to do so, which I have 731 of, and it's going to cost me 1 to 10 forging potential with 0 chance of failing. And once I click this, as we can see, it costs me 1 forging potential. Now I'll make it tier 2. What I can do to change this is I can use glyphs to modify my crafting outcome. For example, Glyph of Hope just gives me a 25% chance for a free roll, which is nice to have, and if you don't need anything else, you can just that. Or if, for example, I don't want dexterity, I use a Glyph of Chaos, and it will upgrade this to T3, but also randomly roll it to something else. In this case, we lost 9 fortune potential, so we don't really have much left to go. We could use some Glyphs of Hope and get really lucky, and it's up to you exactly how you want to go about this. The nice thing is that this means that all you really are looking for during the campaign is just an item with 1 or 2 useful stats on them, and if it has an open prefix, open suffix, well, just simply put in the forge, click on the plus, and well, we can simply just filter by prefixes, look at all the prefix shards that we currently have, and I don't know, let's say we want some movement speed, let's slap on some movement speed on our boots, and well, there we go, we have ourselves a half decent pair of boots. There's a lot more to Last Epoch's crafting. The runes can do quite a lot of few things, the glyphs can do quite a lot of few things, and there's a lot of other endgame aspects to it, and it can get pretty complex, but at the core of it, and realistically 80 to 90% of all the stuff that you're going to do with crafting is simply just going to be taking an item off the ground that looks half decent, and then going in here and then just putting whatever kind of stats you might want on it, and then just simply slapping it on and as it is. The only last thing to mention here is that rarity will impact how much forging potential you find, meaning that you're not going to realistically want to take a white item off the ground and turn it into an endgame item. So, you've made it through the campaign, you're ready to move on to the endgame. What actually is there for you to do? Now, your first piece of endgame content that you're going to interact with is going to specifically be the Monoliths of Fate. In the End of Time tab on your map, you can see all the different monoliths that you have access to. You're going to be starting off with the Fall the Outcast by default, and you're going to slowly progress your way all the way through these islands to the top where the true endgame of the game can be unlocked. By default, we have normal monoliths, which start at their respective level. For example, Fall the Outcast starts at 58, but once you do get to the top and beat the 3 level 90 zones for first time, you have access to empowered monoliths, which are all set to level 100, making every single one of these zones relevant for endgame. What each of these zones offers you is a way for you to be able to specifically target farm whatever you want to. While each of these zones have their own boss, which has their own loot table, they also have different nodes inside of them that allow you to try and hit specific items a little bit easier. For example, in Fall the Outcast, the first zone, the exclusive echo reward here is specifically bows and quivers. Each of these monoliths is going to comprise of an echo web. You start off at the beginning, and from here, you can branch out in whatever direction you want to. This Echo Web is effectively infinite, and all you're really doing is just going from island to island to island, looking for whatever kind of rewards you might be interested in, and interacting with any other interesting things that pop up. For example, we have beacons, and if you're to this node, it'll reveal a giant area around it, and we also have a few endgame bosses, and with 0.2, we have a lot of new island types, and have the ability for you to add in your own islands that customize or are going to change areas around it for you to be able to do. These echoes themselves are really simple. They're going to have a random reward attached to them, which you can see by just hovering over them. Each of these is going to be a randomly generated zone with randomly generated monsters, and every time you do them, you will get some specific modifiers applied to you for that echo and future echoes, such as in this case, if I were to complete this, enemies will have a chance to dodge for the next 3 zones I do, but at the same time, I also get 5% increased XP and 15% rarity for the next 3 zones, which stacks together. In here, you'll encounter quite a lot of different mechanics. You'll encounter XL mages, which are a mini boss fight, which can give you extra loot. You'll encounter champion mobs, you'll encounter nemesis, and you'll encounter a bunch of rares and loot lizards and shrines and boxes and quite a lot of other fun things to encounter that are rewarding and make you want to interact with them. Once you do complete a zone, you will get some time stability. And what I'd like to say about the bonus ability is you don't really have to worry too much about it. If you clear half the echo, great, you get a bunch of bonus. If you rush to the end, that's fine too. Don't really worry about it, kind of forget about it, and it's just a nice bonus to have. This ability will then give you progress at the bar at the top. Now, while progressing through the normal echoes, you will have to do the mini quests that are unlocked at different stages with a big boss fight happening at the end. Once you do fully complete this and beat the boss at the end, you will then unlock the ability to move on to a different timeline. For example, from Fall of the Outcast, we can either move on to Stolen Lance or Black Sun. Their goal here is to simply make it to the top, like I mentioned before. Once you beat these 3 zones for the first time, you can go to the middle island and you'll be able to unlock Empowered Monoliths. Empowered Monoliths are effectively the same thing, except they're all set to level 100 by default, and you can completely skip the mini quests and just fill up this ability bar to immediately fight the Monolith boss. The other really important thing here is you are now going to be introduced to Corruption. Corruption is Last Epoch's true and proper endgame where, well, you can make the game infinitely difficult. Each one corruption makes every single monster do 0.5% more damage and have 0.5% more health, which scales infinitely and actually a little bit exponentially, meaning that eventually no build will be able to continue and eventually you will get outscaled at some point. Corruption is its own thing and there's quite a lot to say here, but the basic gist of it is that you'll encounter a boss called Orbis, and as you kill the main boss of the zone you're fighting, you'll get extra gazes of Orbis, which you can then fight the boss with to just gain a lot more corruption at once. While this is the main chunk of endgame in Last Epoch, it is not the only piece of endgame content you can encounter. These Harbingers require different amounts of corruption to fight, and once you do end up fighting every single one in every single zone, you get access to Abroth, which is the pinnacle boss of the game. At the same time, if you want a little bit of a challenge, this game also offers dungeons. Dungeons are somewhat random procedurally generated areas, which once you go through a few floors, you will be able to access the dungeon boss, which is a pretty difficult endgame encounter that scales based off of the difficulty that you set the dungeon to when you begin it. These bosses have their own loot table with very lucrative and very powerful rewards that, while are somewhat niche, are still things that pretty much almost every build in the game wants to interact with, meaning at some point you're going to want to go and farm dungeons for some piece of loot. The other really important thing here when it comes to dungeons is specifically legendary potential and what that does for the game. Now, legendary potential is its own can of worms, and I plan to make a whole video on this a day or two after launch, as it would literally be a 20-minute video all on its own to explain legendary potential and what it does. But the basic gist of legendary potential is that it effectively makes every unique item in the game worthwhile for you to interact with, worthwhile for you to pick up, and it can turn every single unique item into some sort of endgame item that you're going to want in some build. Legendary potential is based off of the rarity of the item, and what you could do is you can go do a Temporal Sanctum, and once you get to the end of it, you can use the Eternity Cache to then sacrifice an item to put some of those stats permanently onto the unique that you sacrifice them into. The legendary potential of an item scales with rarity, like I mentioned, so quote-unquote garbage items and quote-unquote more common items are going to have a higher chance to roll with higher LP, meaning you can put more stats on it all at once. More endgame items that are super rare are basically going to have no chance of getting LP, so you can't realistically make those better unless you get extremely lucky. Again, there will be a whole separate video on this because there's so much to say about it, but all you need to know about, especially when it comes to starting off the game, is if you see an item with 3 or 4 legendary potential on it, you really should hold on to it, because that item on its own might be enough to literally allow you to play a whole build just based off of that item alone, or it might be a massive power boost in some cases. So you've made it to the end game. You're now blasting. You're having fun. You're trying to get some loot. But the one final thing that we need to discuss, which is going to be very core to exactly how you're going to go about enjoying and experiencing the game, is going to be talking about the factions available in the game. Now, in 0.2, we are getting the Woven faction, and we already have the Forgotten Knights faction. And these are endgame factions, which are their own thing. Everyone can be a part of and are just ways for you to progress to the end game and just have more content for you to do. Now, when it comes to the Circle of Fortune and the Merchants Guild factions instead, this is going to be something where you have to make a choice depending on which one you want to join. The cool thing here is that whatever faction you choose to progress with between Circle of Fortune and Merchants Guild, your progress is stored. So what I'm trying to get to out here is that you are free to change and test and see exactly what you want to as much as you want to. What these two factions do, Circle of Fortune and Merchants Guild, are basically philosophies on how exactly you want to go and play the game. Do you want to trade with people? Do you want to buy and sell items? And do you want gold to be your main progression? Well, then play Merchants Guild, get access to the auction house, and do exactly so. Do you prefer to instead do everything on your own? Do you have no interest in trading with people? And do you instead like the satisfaction of getting big drops and farming for items and making your own gear and all that? Well, then the Circle of Fortune is for you. You're going to see a lot of content creators say a lot of things. And honestly, my recommendation is to literally ignore everyone else. My opinion on this is that there is literally no difference between the two factions. Now, yes, there's some pros and cons to each of them, but realistically, and especially as a new player, literally just pick whatever sounds more fun to you. Do you want to trade? Go Merchants Guild. Do you want to do everything on your own? Do Circle of Fortune. They both respect your time. They're both reasonable. And in this game, playing Circle of Fortune and playing SSF is 100% valid. And honestly, a majority of players actually play Circle of Fortune over playing Merchants Guild. This game does SSF really, really well, and Circle of Fortune makes it very, very fun. And what I'm trying to get at here is to tell you that if you're borderline thinking about trying it because you're only used to trading in every RPG, because every RPG is balanced around trading, just go try it, have fun, and again, you could respec as much as you want to. What these factions are going to do is they're going to have a progress bar that you slowly fill up by literally just playing the game and literally doing anything. And with this favor, you're then going to slowly unlock different ranks, which give you different benefits for joining every faction. For example, with Circle of Fortune, you're going to get more and more and more loot drops, and it's going to change more and more portions of the game to make it even more friendly, to the point where you can experience massive loot explosions extremely often once you get to the end of it. For Merchants Guild, on the other hand, progressing through it is going to unlock you more and more of the auction house, eventually allowing you to trade every single item in the game. Again, just choose whatever you want to, whatever is fun to you, and have fun with it, and you can always change your mind later. There are some restrictions here. For example, if you choose one and get a bunch of items to drop with that faction, if you swap over, those items are now faction locked, meaning I can't play Circle of Fortune, get a lot of loot, and then sell at Merchants Guild, and vice versa. I can't go to Merchants Guild, buy a bunch of gear, and swap back to Circle of Fortune. Because the choice is per character, you can experience both sides of the game if you want to, and because leveling them is not too difficult, it's pretty easy to get to the max level of both of them and experience the game fully through those means. To actually unlock them, all you have to do is simply make it all the way to Majelka in the Divine Era, and simply just go to the Upper District, where you have a side area that you can go to where you can talk to the faction representatives and choose whichever faction that you want to. From there, there's going to be a waypoint that you can go to, which will directly bring you to your faction's location, where you can interact with everything that they have. And that's honestly pretty much everything that you would want to know as a new player. While we are probably glossing over a few things here, and for example, we didn't mention Arena, which is a whole other endgame system on its own, I felt like what we went over in this video is a pretty balanced take on the core aspects of the game that you might want to know about, that you might be confused about, that you might have a question on, and that might excite you to interact with the game further. While at the same time, I do plan to have a whole video out a few days post-launch discussing how to level alternative characters if you would like to level multiple characters and try out different builds. And I do plan to cover a few other topics as season 1 progresses on quite a lot of other things that I feel like people might really want to know about. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments below at any point. I'd be more than happy to help you as soon as I can. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by Twitch and ask me your questions there. And well, if you check out Last Epoch for the first time, I hope you have fun, I hope you enjoy your time, and I hope you have a wonderful season 2. With that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.